Hello and welcome to the ClojureBridge London Coach Readiness session. So the idea of this event is to help you understand what ClojureBridge is, what your expectations are as a coach, and basically how we run it. Just make sure that you understand we're all on the kind of same page, and also to help you understand what we're actually trying to do with the event as well. What's the aim? What's the purpose of that? Again, so we're on the same page. So I'm going to go through this presentation. This is me. I ride my bike. If you want to sponsor me, I'll come back to that later on. But let's look at why ClojureBridge, why we're doing ClojureBridge in the first place. It's really to kind of grow our community and diversity in our community, and that comes in many shapes and forms. And ClojureBridge is a specific event that we do aimed at getting underrepresented groups into the community, but also into the industry as well. So some of the people that come along have never actually been in industry, haven't actually had their first job as coding as yet, and some people come along and they're only still just starting out in that as well. So we're trying to build a picture of what it's like in there, and also give them an understanding of what it's like to do Clojure as well. So this is a picture from our first event. The lady in the cream top there is Anna. She organized the first event. I guess the idea is we're trying to make our industry look more like this than just all the same kind of faces. So we want more diversity in there, and things are improving. There's a lot more different types of people involved in our industry as well. So that's really great. Does anybody know when our first event was? Anyone like to guess what year? Were you there? No? Oh, okay. Okay, right. Yeah, we did the first one in 2015. This is so the one we're doing at Signal is our 9th, if I've counted correctly. So we've been doing about 2 or 3 a year, and worldwide there's a whole kind of ClojureBridge outside. So we didn't start this; it was all happening already outside. I think it started over in San Francisco a lot, but then even ClojureBridge wasn't the start of that. There's other bridges as well. And so there's the Bridge Foundation, which they're all under. There's Rails Bridge, which is probably one of the first bridges that was around. But there's also Go Bridge and Lexa Bridge as well. So again, the idea is to reach out to communities, to groups of people that are at the moment they're not the people that are organising the events feel that are not really represented. So that's what we're truly trying to do. And in ClojureBridge London, especially, we've had quite a few people come through and to go on to not just kind of get involved in the industry, but get jobs using Clojure, get jobs in functional language as well. So Abby started as an attendee, then she got a job at style.com, and then we did encourage her to get involved in the coaching side of thing, and then she got involved in organizing, which she prefers more as well. So Abby helps organize the events now as well. So it's great to have diversity in the organizing team. And Gavil, who's unfortunately she's ill today, but she'll be coming along as a coach. And she attended in 2015. Like then, the next time she came along as a coach, as I think did Jennifer as well. And she's also given talks in Clojure and ClojureX. She got a job doing Clojure at Health Unlocked. And yeah, I've managed to convince her to be as crazy about SpaceMax as I am. Which is nice. And we've also had other people come through, like Cara, who's come through, and she's now a really active organizer of Code Bar, which is another kind of coaching thing that happens every week in London. She also gets involved in Outreachy, which is trying to find and set up internships for spotting diverse people as well. So there's been lots of people like this that come through and really kind of made a difference to their careers as well. So this is what we're trying to do. I mean, not everybody's going to do Clojure. We don't expect everybody to adopt Clojure, but hopefully we give them an encouragement and support that they can actually feel like they can actually do something in our industry. And they actually feel that this industry is actually a very welcoming industry as well. So I hope that that's the kind of the attitude that you're coming with for this event while you're coaching. And there's a lot more kind of details I went into in the ClojureX talk I covered with Yelena as well. And Yelena's being a great kind of ambassador for Clojure and ClojureBridge at ThoughtWorks as well. So that's been really cool. Any questions so far? No questions from the audience. Everybody's full of pizza, which is nice. So we do have a code of conduct. We take this very seriously. Again, this is partly to make sure we have a really good experience for all the attendees, but also the coaches and everybody else involved. And so we want to demonstrate the best of our community. We want to have encourage a very positive attitude and encourage people to because we want to encourage people to come to our other events as well. So it'd be great to have people who are attending ClojureBridge actually come to the London Clojurians events and feel like it's an event that they can come to. It's a welcoming community that will kind of not just stick them in the corner. They will actually engage with them in a meaningful way. And so yeah, we encourage you to be as helpful and supportive as you can, and very, very positive as well. Feel free to share all your opinions about things, but as we all know, thank you, Joe. Opinions are not facts; they're opinions. So feel free to discuss any ideas with people. You don't have to stick to all the course material, but yeah. Obviously we're trying to get through things, but there are people at different levels, so feel free to share your ideas and experiences as you go through the day as well, and help them understand what you kind of do while you're coaching as well. We'll nominate a code of conduct officer. This is usually Abby, but if anybody wants to be the code of conduct officer, then please let me know. So a code of conduct officer is just basically somebody that anybody can go to, whether that be a student or a coach. If they're feeling uncomfortable with a situation, then the code of conduct officer is somebody external from the situation that can go in and try and sort it out, at least get people into a safe space. So if somebody's saying stuff and somebody else is finding it offensive, then hopefully we're comfortable enough to say, please don't use those words. I find them uncomfortable, or I find them offensive. Please don't use those words. But if somebody keeps on doing that, the coach or the student might not feel comfortable in actually stopping them. So we can go to the code of conduct officer, and they will come along and ask the person quite politely or firmly to kind of come out of that space and ask them why kind of a certain behavior is taking place. And it's not an easy job, because we don't like to criticize people, but we're not criticizing the person. We're trying to stop the behavior that we think is not conducive, is not positive in that way. So we'll actually kind of take them to a side and actually ask them and explain to them why we think that behavior or the words that they're using is not appropriate for this event as well. We're not trying to police anybody. I mean, they're free to kind of have their opinions and thoughts, but there's certain things we don't kind of want to push onto other people listening. And I'm sure you kind of understand what kind of language I'm talking about as well. We did have one person who did attend. It was actually a student that we did actually have to ask her to not come up to the Saturday event because of her behavior on the Friday event. It turns out she had been drinking quite a lot before the event, and that may have contributed to her kind of very negative behavior. Luckily, it didn't seem to affect everybody else, but if it affects another person, then it's not just putting them off this event, but it's potentially putting off the whole industry as well. So if somebody comes along to this kind of event and there's swearing or very negative or racially charged language, then it just paints a very negative picture of the whole industry as well. Luckily, we very rarely come across this. Everybody is everybody really positive. All the students are really excited about this, and all the coaches have been excellent so far. So I don't expect this, but just in case it happens, this is a situation. We have mechanisms to deal with that as well. So any questions on that? No? Anybody want to be a code of conduct officer? Okay, cool. Thank you. We don't just have to have one, we can have two as well. But yes, thank you very much, Jennifer. And schedule. So what's actually going to go on? What do we do? This is on the meetup page, but I'll go through this in a little bit more detail. So the Friday evening has a few small things that we do, and we mainly do them so we don't have to do them on the Saturday. So the Saturday we should just be able to come in here, have a bit of breakfast, get into our groups, and just spend the whole day in the workshop doing coding and coaches helping the students get through the material, asking any questions and so on. So on the Friday, we used to spend a lot more time doing an install, but the install now is actually optional because people can actually just code in the web page of the workshop. So there's a built-in REPL into the workshop. So we leave the install till the end so people can actually go early if they don't want to install a Clojure environment on their laptop. But if they do, and we do encourage them to install a Clojure environment, so then they can carry on learning Clojure more like we do as developers. So there's the install at the end. At the start, we do like a big picture kind of overview of Clojure. So I'll do kind of an intro to Clojure as well. We can do some demos. Did anybody have any ideas about doing a demo themselves? This is when nobody volunteers. Maybe Hugo? No? Yeah, that would be great to have somebody from Signal to talk about what you're doing and doing a demo as well. It doesn't have to be like you're not talking about like a half-hour demo. It's like 5-10 minutes kind of thing, talking about talking about what companies do, and it's not just about Clojure, although you can focus on Clojure if you like. But it's kind of what do you do? How do you use that technology to solve business problems? And then specifically, you can drill down into how you're using Clojure to do that as well. If there are any women who would like to talk about what they've been doing, and again, it can just be a few minutes talking about their experiences in industry, especially if you've just been starting, or even if you've been in industry quite a while. Why are you interested in certain technologies, or what is your experiences? What have you liked? What have you not liked about the industry, and how you've seen it changing? It's just to give the audience, the students, a kind of a good picture about what the industry is really like from your point of view. And again, it's just your point of view, it's your ideas and your experiences. But even that is very, very useful and very powerful for the students because they don't even have that usually as well. So that kind of makes up the Friday evening. And then the Saturday, as I say, we can just basically come in and just start the coaching. And so the coaching starts, I think we go from 11 till like 12:30, and then we have lunch. And just before we break for lunch, we'll have a little gathering just to kind of encourage the students to share what they've learned so far, or anything that surprised them, anything that's got them excited, anything they're worried about, concerned about. It's just a chance for them to start talking about the experience so far before they go off into lunch, and then hopefully they'll encourage them to keep on talking about the things that they're learning and what they're wanting to achieve during lunch as well. So it's a chance for the students to talk to each other as well, because what we'll do is break up the students into people who are really just starting, so absolute beginners, or people who have not coded before, and people who've done like 6 months or more kind of coding, or they've just started their first job, or they've kind of got their first language. So we'll break them off into another group, and this gives a chance for it makes it a bit easier for the coaches to understand what kind of level to try and pitch things to as well. Okay. And then we'll have a retrospective at the end of Saturday. Again, just to give the students a chance to give us some feedback about what actually worked well for them. And this has been really enlightening for us to improve ClojureBridge over the years. And we've taken a lot of the ideas in there and put it into how we do things as well. So it has been really, really useful. And we also do some demos. I do have some demos around as well. So I'll do a few very simple demos. These are only going to be like 30 seconds to a minute long, just to kind of give somebody like the students an idea about the diversity within inside Clojure itself, because it's not just writing code for business. You can also do a lot of creative stuff as well. So I don't know if you've seen this. There's a video that basically replicates the shape of me by what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. Ed Sheeran. Thank you very much. Yes. And so basically using Clojure and Overtone to basically write music in that way as well. So it's really kind of very interesting. Oops. Oh, there we go. And there we go. Did I? Yep. Where's the next page? There we go. But it's quite a long video, so I'm not going to go through all that. But just to kind of give them a flavor about what's going on. And then we'll break into actually creating, installing the editors. So we'll break out into like different spaces around the room. And the editors that we've kind of come to recommend are like Spacemacs, Emacs. Again, because a lot of the people in the community use that. But again, it's not the only choice. There's also Atom and ProtoRepl. And there's also Visual Studio Code and Cursive as well. So who's using, just out of curiosity, who's using Emacs, Spacemacs, whatever kind of thing? Oh, quite a few. Who's using Atom, ProtoRepl kind of thing? Ooh, there we go. Then we're using Proton mode, just out of curiosity. No. Never mind. And there's Visual Studio Code and Carver. Somebody's dabbled with that as well. It's quite nice. It's up and coming. It's kind of like it's a bit like Cider, but for like Visual Studio Code. That's the intent of the actual code. And who's used IntelliJ, Cursive? Okay. Has anybody used anything else that I've missed off? Just out of curiosity. Vim. Oh yes, yes. Oh yeah, there we go. So if we go to ClojureBridge London, Lighttable. Yeah, we used to use Lighttable, but we found a lot of interesting issues with. Oops. Found a lot of interesting issues with installing it in some platforms, especially on certain operating systems, which will remain nameless. So I've actually updated in the prepare. So this kind of in the actual, this is the web page for the workshop. So in the navigation, there's a Friday section. So this is all kind of the introduction and so on, but also the development tools. So if somebody doesn't want to install anything, that's fine, because they can do it all in the REPL. Yeah, so you kind of just like write code into the REPL, and it's got clips built in, so you can kind of see like the code evaluating before their eyes, so they can actually write code right in here as well. The only thing is that this isn't going to save their code. So if they want to save it, they can just use any old editor. They can use Notepad or whatever simple editor they want to that. But if they want to install a specific Clojure environments, well, they don't have to. They can just use REPL IT. If that will load. Yeah, so they can use REPL IT. So there's instructions how to use REPL IT, which is just basically you go into REPL.it, you select Clojure, and it gives you a nice REPL environment in a browser. But it'll actually save it, and you can actually share it and fork it like you can do with GitHub gists as well. So it's a really nice little tool there. So if somebody doesn't know what editor to use, they can use REPL IT as well if they want to save things, but they still want like a Clojure experience. And if they are feeling brave and they want to install Clojure on their environment, then this is kind of like the basics for doing that. So obviously we need Java. Probably just recommend Java 8, so I might update that. And then there's specific installs for doing Java for each of the different operating systems and different methods of installing it as well. So here we've got Debian, we've got Homebrew, Chocolatey for Windows. So Chocolatey is a bit like Homebrew, but for Windows itself. Is anybody using Windows? Nobody is admitting to it, or maybe a little bit. Okay. You'll have to join me as the Windows expert. Yes. But yeah, there is. I tried to do that for the same thing for Java, for Leiningen, and for the editors as well. So we've kind of suggested these simple editors for. That's not right. Where is it? Oh yeah, development tools. There we go. So in here, I've suggested the simple, like these four basic editors, and you could probably do with a bit more detail, but just to kind of give them the basics of what's available. So we got Atom with ProtoRepl. There's also Proton. So the only difference is it gives you like the Spacemacs type menu in Atom, because I find the keyboard configuration or the keyboard bindings in Atom quite fiddly, especially on Linux. So I use Proton, which is another package you can do, and it gives you a Spacemacs-like thing. Not that I'm obsessed with Spacemacs in any way, shape, or form. So there's editor, so there's install guides for each of those. Although I think did I do the Carver one? I need to do a Carver one. And these are basically taking what's there in their official pages, but like simplifying it so it's actually a lot easier to follow. Especially if you look at the cursive one. Oh, am I in the right section? Oh, sorry, in the install guides. There we go. So in the cursive one, it's quite verbose. I've just taken out the most important parts of that, so it's a bit easier to follow. And I think, I did do the Carver one. It's the user guide I haven't done for that. So it just shows you how to install each of these on the various platforms. And then there's also editor guides as well, so it kind of shows you the basics of using the specific things as well. Just kind of the essentials. How do you start a REPL? How do you evaluate the code? How do you change the namespace? Kind of the real core essentials you need to know to do anything with any of these editors. It's not a full user guide because they'll spend the whole day reading the user guide. But it's enough to get them going and be able to evaluate code inside those editors as well. And this is probably a useful reference for if somebody's using one of these editors and you don't know how to use that yourself. You can actually look in the workshop and they'll give you like the essential key bindings and things to be able to use that if they get stuck. I think so. Any questions on the dev tools? Nope. Okay, dokie. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. So you mean it basically like so when you evaluate, you see the results in line? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Well, I mean, you can get that on Spacemacs and on Atom, and I think on Visual Studio Cover as well. So I think they all do it now, and I think they all pretty much do it by default. So you don't actually have to have a separate buffer open for this. Oops. Yeah, yeah. So if somebody's not sure, they can just use RepLIT if they've used one of these. If they've used, well, it's unlikely that they've used Spacemacs, but it has happened that some people have used Spacemacs or Emacs. If they've used Atom or Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ, then that's probably the most obvious choice. If they're not sure, Atom's fairly lightweight and fairly simple to use, fairly simple to set up, or Visual Studio Code. Both of those are fairly easy. If they do have some Java background, then IntelliJ is probably a better kind of choice for them because that's probably what they're going to end up using anyway. But yeah, but again, they don't have to install this. They could just do it in the. And most of the students are actually just doing especially the beginners are just doing it in the REPL, in the browser, in the workshop itself. So when they come in and do an exercise in here, so they go into combination lock, then they can actually go in and do. There's a REPL window here, and they can actually start solving the challenge straight inside the workshop material. Okie dokie. No more questions? No. Cool. And then just a note about teaching is not doing. So we're not trying to teach them everything about Clojure. We're not trying to teach them, really. We're trying to just help them learn at their own pace. So again, I'll be like saying to them that we're not trying to get you through the entire content. We don't expect everybody to finish. There's actually too much content for most people to finish. The beginners tend not to get through to the end. Some of the more experienced people who've done a bit of coding before, they get enough from the simple exercises, then they go on to some of the advanced challenges, and that's fine as well. But you're just there to help them kind of keep pushing them in the right direction, keep them kind of focused, and keep them motivated. That's the kind of main role. If you can teach them something, then great. But yeah, make sure you kind of like it's something that's going to be useful to them as well. Give them lots of examples. If you have some, feel free to like add your own examples to what's in the workshop as well. I think we will have monitors in all the groups as well, so it's like feel free to actually show somebody some code as well. You might not want to show them like you might not want to go through like your all your deepest darkest macros. That might be a bit too much for like their first bit of Clojure, but you can certainly kind of show them some simple examples, or even write some examples as well. I'll write some variations around that and show them those pieces of code as well. And one another piece of advice, we've had a lot of feedback about this, is to not touch somebody else's keyboard. I know it's quite tempting if you want to show somebody something, go on their keyboard and show it to them, because it's easier than trying to explain all the details, especially while you're installing it. But there are some problems with that. Obviously, some people, even if they say it's okay, they might not like you touching their keyboard. And it is quite a personal kind of space, so be wary of that. And for me, the most the biggest thing is that it's really kind of disconnecting the student from actually learning something. If you're doing it for them, they're not doing it themselves. And so if you're on the keyboard, it's very easy for them to disconnect. It's like when you're pair programming and somebody you're pairing with is just not talking to you, like you're going to disconnect eventually because you're just sitting there watching them type. And if you're not talking to each other, you're not learning anything as well. So it's very easy to get into that mode if you start to jump on their keyboard. And it also gives them a good sense of confidence, and if they actually manage to do something that they thought that they couldn't do as well, even if it's just simple like doing ls on the terminal or something like that, because there's lots of different things around the course that they might learn that you can show them as well. There we got. We looked at the materials. It's using clips, as you can see here. There we go. It doesn't type the code answers in for you. Unfortunately, this is just a GIF. But there's in some of the Friday stuff, I've added things like using scalable vector graphics to try and make it more graphical. I did have an idea of trying to add like a little Fibonacci kind of exercise. So I'll see if I can add some exercises to create some SVG images towards the end of the material as well, just to make it a bit more interesting for them. And you can also use reagent stuff in there as well. Actually, I'll show you the briefly show you the Friday stuff. Where are we? So when I'm introducing Clojure, especially like in the creative arts, there's like yeah, SVG graphics. So you can generate, showing them you can generate HTML with Hiccup, and is that working? It's a bit slow today. I may have too many tabs open. There we go. So you can show that you can write some Hiccup markup, and this is an alternative to writing HTML. And you can draw images, so they can put their own images in there. Obviously, need to make sure that they're putting the right kind of images in there, and you can generate HTML code from this simple data structure as well. So it's a nice way to kind of introduce data structures into the students. And there's also yeah, SVG graphics in there as well. So I might actually put that in as an exercise later on, see if people remember how to do it. And there's another one where, oh, this gets a bit crazy, like generating wallpaper colors. might take a little bit of time to load. It does seem a little bit slower on the WeWork Wi-Fi, so it might be worth kind of testing. I'll test that out a little bit later on in there as well, because normally it's a bit faster than that. And there's also like 2D games, which I'll show them as well, just simple Flappy Birds kind of thing, because it shows the kind of interactive nature of Clojure, and the REPL is a very interactive thing, but unless you're actually programming something that's visual, then it's hard to see for the first time until you actually start using the REPL yourself. Then it gets a little bit, okay, you're typing stuff in and you get an answer, but until you actually like get into Clojure, you don't really appreciate the REPL at first, and then it kind of grows on you. But showing somebody programming a game and having the game actually changed by doing the code, changing the code, then it's a very easy and obvious way to see the interactive nature of what you're doing and how you're building things. Same with the music as well. Okay, any questions? No. There are some bigger projects at the end, and most students won't do this, but we have had a few students working on some of the bigger projects. So there's a couple of things in additional projects. So there's like building a simple server-side web application just using Ring and Composure. And so if somebody's interested in like how back-end websites work, or there's using ClojureScript to build a simple tic-tac-toe game. So again, these are both kind of step-by-step walking you through there. They're not really challenges. They're more like an extension to the workshop itself. But obviously, like the beginners are probably not going to use that, but some of the more experienced developers who are new to Clojure might want to give that a try, especially in the afternoon. So I think we had 3 or 4 of the developers at the last event that were going through building a website, and one of the students had an idea about a website they wanted to build, something they'd seen in JavaScript, and they wanted to build it in Clojure. So we did that together as well. So feel free to kind of break away from the workshop material if that's what the student wants to do. And there is a bunch of examples in here. So if we go to the additional projects stuff, there's some kata style challenges if somebody wants ideas about examples of what to do, and wants to do things test driven as well. So there's like a discussion about how you would write the Clojure test style stuff there as well. Yeah, it is very simple kind of kata things, but again, walking you through a way of solving them. And again, you can kind of get their input on how to actually do that as well. And there's just a little bit of info on writing tests and how to write a test. Again, not extensive, but enough to kind of give them the basics of how to write a test, because we all write tests, so we all know this stuff, don't we? Yeah, of course we do. Okay, there we go. And then there's some slightly bigger ones. There's like finding the most common word from a book from Project Gutenberg. And there's Celebrity Name Splash, which is like a little coding dojo challenge we did a while ago, and it's just basically taking the names of 2 celebrities and mixing them up. Yeah, again, it's just simple stuff using using a bit of strings and collections just to have a little play around with Clojure as well. And there's like a very simple encoder decoder, which is the Clacks messaging stuff as well. So there's this kind of walks you through how to do that as well. There's a bit of reading, but you can just kind of work through the code and code examples. And there's a bit of like design. How do you actually design something in Clojure in this particular Clacks messaging one as well? How do you design the alphabet that you use to do the decoding and encoding as well? So there's far more than, well, any of us could really sit down and go through the entire thing as well. And you don't have to do every single piece of it, and you can actually skip plenty of it as well and just go back to it as well. So feel free to let them kind of go through their own journey in this material. Any questions? No. Okay. Do we want to do some exercise? Who's got laptops? I've got laptops. Whose brain is still engaged? Yeah, maybe. So what I thought we'd do, if you group up into pairs, and you coach each other doing one of these exercises. So first person does the MapReduce sandwich, and the other person kind of like offers advice and stuff, and then the other person does and they swap over, and then the other person does the combination lock, and vice versa. So if you want to get into groups, I'll let you self-assemble, and if you don't self-assemble, I'll assemble for you. But I'm pretty sure you can kind of group up together. Just grab whoever you're sitting next. Sorry. Are there any students? Well, you should definitely. I think we can invite more people. So the question was basically how many people are signed up. So I think there's about 35 people signed up. I need to check through the list about which are coaches and which are students, but I think we have space for like a few more if somebody else wants to come along. So if you know people, or if you just want to reach out to them, but feel free to encourage more people to sign up. We get too many, we'll just have to order more food. It's a big office, so we've got plenty of time to. So once you've done these, then we'll just get back together briefly and see if there's any feedback about that. So if you've got any questions and queries, how we can help you kind of get ready for the event. But I'll let you go, and we'll do 20 minutes or so, and then if you finish early, then just give me a shout. Thank you very much. Boop. Boop. Wi-Fi details, yes. Yeah, you can just use the guest Wi-Fi.